I've always wanted to be a part of a church that actually did something instead of just coming to church on Sundays. And so thank you for being that church. I mean, this is pretty cool that we get to be a part of people hearing the gospel maybe for the first time or for the first time effectively. And so this is a really exciting thing. Good job, everybody. Yes. But yeah, we can clap again. That's awesome. Okay. My number one job for the next 30 minutes is not to slip on any of this, okay? So if you see me slip, you can laugh. It's okay. My pride will be fine. Okay. So my name's Josh. I'm the teaching pastor here. If you're new here, I just want to say, hey, welcome. Thanks for coming. One of the things you might want to know is that we have been in this book of the New Testament called Hebrews. And it's a kind of a longer book. And so what we've done to kind of help make it more understandable and break it down is we have broke it down into several mini-series. So we're doing like 5 mini-series in a larger series in the book of Hebrews. And we are today starting the very last installment of Hebrews. Does anybody like, man, we're almost done with Hebrews? That's crazy. Or all y'all kind of like, I'm so ready to be done with Hebrews. Good to see there's some Christians here. Anyway, we're in this last installment, and we're going to call this last installment, this last mini-series, we're going to call it Remain. We're calling it Remain because the concept of remaining, of staying, is kind of a big theme in the book of Hebrews. If you were to read the book of Hebrews over and over and over, what you would begin to see is these themes kind of emerge, and it kind of sounds like this. This is my paraphrase. The author of Hebrews, who was writing to a bunch of people who used to be Jewish, who converted to Christianity, but then are undergoing some persecution. They're being rejected by their friends and family. They're being ostracized, and so they're tempted to go back into Judaism to belong again, to get out from under that persecution. So what the author of Hebrews is saying is that Jesus is so much better than anything this world has to offer. He's better than Judaism. Jesus is better than the Greek religions. Jesus is the best thing out there. So I know it's hard, but stay. Remain. This is the thing that your heart longs for. Here it is in Jesus. And so he's saying, stay, remain. So that's kind of the what we're going to call this last series because we want to kind of bring that theme out a little bit. And today we are going to be in Hebrews chapter 11. And if you know anything about Hebrews, you've heard of chapter 11. Sometimes it's called the Faith Hall of Fame. It's a list of people who were faithful, who had big faith. And the whole point of chapter 11, which we're going to be in the next 2 weeks, is this. The author of Hebrews is lifting these people up, saying these people had faith. They stayed. They remained, even though their circumstances preached a different message. Have you ever been to that point in your life, to a point in your life, when your problems spoke to you a different message than the one you received in the gospel? Like you have financial problems, and your problems are basically telling you that God is not a provider. Or maybe you have relational problems, and your problems are telling you that God is not love. Maybe you have legalism or a rules-based religion problems, and it's telling you that when you fail, you are no longer connected to the God of the universe anymore. And so what happens is we get this sort of picture of our lives, this thing that we think is reality, but indeed is not reality. We get this idea of what our problems are telling us, but what faith is, and what these people who had faith, they stayed despite what their problems were saying. Why? Because they're connected to something deeper. They knew that this looks like truth, but it's not the truth. The truth is here. It's running underneath what we think is reality. There's a deeper reality. Something else is going on here, and what connected them to that reality was faith. And so we're going to be talking about faith today, and what we're going to see is we're going to see what faith is, because it's important to know what it is, because if you don't know what it is, you won't use it. I recently learned about dry shampoos. Anybody, I wasn't using it before, but now I don't have to shower, so. Well, that got a lot more laughs than I thought it would. Are you guys saying something to me? Because I'm just kidding. Anyway, if you don't know what it is, you're not going to use it. And so my hope is that we'll talk about what faith is. That'll help you kind of understand a little bit more about it. And then we're going to talk about what it does. So faith, what it is, and what it does. And we're going to start today. Actually, I have a parable that I'd like to tell you, a short story. And it kind of goes like this. One day, a tiny little acorn was walking along a tiny little acorn road. And he came upon this village made of sticks and grass and leaves, where a whole bunch of other little acorns lived. And as he walked in, he was very confident. He whistled as he walked. And everybody in this village was very unaccustomed to strange things, to new things. This is weird. And so they saw this acorn and they were very confused. What is this guy doing? So they decided to follow him, see what he was going to do. So this acorn walks to the center of town, plants himself right in the center of the square, takes his little cap off, puts it down, and looks at curiosity. And he allows that curiosity to kind of build, and at the very peak, at the right moment, he swings his little acorn hand and points up off into the distance at an object that was very familiar to the people in this village. And he says, that tree, that great oak tree, that tree that is so tall you can't see the top of, that we see is the sky is this tree. It's so wide you can't really see around it at all, and you can barely kind of see it through the blades of grass. That tree is where we all came from. Some of us bump our heads on the way down, and so we forget. We come from this giant tree, and what's crazy is that we have these shells, this shiny, strong exterior shell, and I know that that's kind of what it means to be an acorn, is you've got this strong shell. That's who you are, is this shell. But I have to tell you something. If you will allow that shell to die, if you will allow it to break open, there is something deeper inside of you that if you allow that to happen, you will grow into something that looks a lot like that tree. You too can grow up into a tree. And maybe you can imagine how the other acorns felt about this. Some of them bumped their partners and said, "This guy's nuts." Yeah, you're welcome. I realized this week that I became a dad when I started telling those jokes. It wasn't when my daughter was born. It's when I started telling awful dad jokes. Anyway, this guy's nuts. Some of the other acorns looked at each other and became very angry, and they responded. They said to the acorn in the center of the square, they said, "Sir, don't you know acorns don't fall out of a tree? We don't come from that. Acorns come from squirrels. They deliver them on the ground. That's how we get new acorns. And are you telling us that this thing that we put our pride in, our hard exterior shells that are so shiny and beautiful, are you telling us that that's not enough, that there's something more out there for us? This is good enough for us. We are proud acorns, and you're giving people false hope after they die, that they can become something else entirely. That is completely false hope." And the little acorn in the middle of the square looked at them, and he said, "Okay, well, if anybody wants to follow me, I'm going to go bury myself and become a tree." And he walked off to the next village. We're going to be talking about faith today, and here's kind of my basic principle. Here's the big idea, and I think I'll prove this to you in the scriptures, in the passage that we're going to be in, and it's this: that faith is something that you've never thought of before. Faith is your connection to what's really real. Faith is your soul's connection to what's really real, not the reality that everybody sees, like those little acorns, but the reality that the one acorn saw. It's your connection to what's really real. We're going to pick this up in verse 1, and the author of Hebrews is going to define faith for us in verse 1. So I want you to see this. Verse 1. Now faith is means he's going to say what it is, right? It's fairly self-explanatory. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for. It is the conviction of things not seen. I want you to see this because this is really crucial for how we understand faith. Okay, let's start with this last one, the conviction of things not seen. I want you to think of this for a second. Have you ever gotten to a place in your life in which you saw something that nobody else believed was there? Let me give you an example of this because I think you do this every day without realizing it. Have you ever got to the point in your relationship with your spouse, or sometimes this happens at work, or sometimes this happens with your kids, where you saw that they were currently doing something that wasn't right, and it was going to lead to a reality in the future that wasn't as good, right? So sometimes this is like efficiencies at work. We're spending money on this, but we don't have to. We could save money by doing this. Sometimes this happens at home. Hey, we're baking the pies this way, but we got to put more sugar in those things because that leads to a better reality. Amen? And why do we cook at all? Let's just get Taco Bell delivered. This says more about me, I realize. What's happening there is that you see a reality in the future that is better than what you're currently experiencing. It's not seen yet. What you see here is sugarless pie. What you see here is a waste of money. What you see is this current reality, but there's something else coming that you don't yet see. And in faith, our faith is the thing that convinces you that future can happen. I believe that we can do things better and it will lead to a better result. So I want you to see this. You don't see that yet because it's in the future, obviously. But right now, you can, with faith, look to the future and see a possible future that you want to make happen. And this word conviction is really good because it means to be reproved. We don't really use that word a lot now in English, but if something is reproved, it means it's been proven true. It means it's something that stood the test of rigorous questioning. And conviction is the sense of that. Have you ever felt just so sure about something? Maybe it was one of those examples. I know that if we get our toilet paper from this company and not this company, I am sure that we can save money, right? Or sometimes with your kids, it's like, I know that you don't like brushing your hair. This is personal. I know you don't like brushing your hair, and I'm going to have to brush it for you, and it's going to be the worst thing. But if you brush your hair, you're going to be so much happier on the other side of it because then you're not going to have all these knots and all this. They call them, what do my daughters call them? Rat's nests, which is great because no little girl wants a rat on their head. So anyway. You're not going to have rat's nests. I'm seeing something in the future for her that's not current reality, but I'm convinced, even though she's not, I know that if we do this, it's going to yield a good result. That's what faith is. It's that sense of conviction. I know this is true, even though what's going on around me doesn't really look like this is true. I know that it's still true. It's almost like there's a reality beneath the reality. There's what everybody else sees, like that town of acorns, and then there's what you see. I know that there's something more going on here. It's the conviction of things not seen. As Christians, we kind of have this, right? Like we know that what's going on in this world is true and real, but we know that there's so much more. And as Christians, we have a connection to that. We have this relationship with the God of the universe, and it's in the experience of that relationship that we are convinced, we're convicted that there's something more going on in this reality than what other people see. We're connected to something deeper. That's the conviction of the things not seen. Here's another one. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. I think this word assurance really gets to the heart of what I'm trying to say even better. It's the word hypostasis in Greek. Hypo, meaning below, like a hypodermic needle goes into your skin below your dermis, below your skin, hypodermic. Hypo, below. And stasis, which comes from this verb histemi, which means to make stand. So think about this word picture. What he's calling faith is this. It's the thing underneath you that makes you stand. It's a kind of a word picture for a foundation, something that you can stand on that is sure. Does anybody like laughing at people who fall down? It's just me? Yeah, amen. So, winter months are really great for that because there's just like a sudden influx of YouTube videos of people just slipping and falling. And I got to be careful how much I act that out because I might slip and fall. But maybe you can see kind of what I'm getting at here. There is a huge difference between standing on a sloped driveway that is coated in ice and standing on that same driveway when it's not coated in ice. The difference is that when you're standing on ice, you don't have a firm foundation. You're going to flip, and you're going to slip, and you're going to fall, and then we're all going to laugh at you. Which is not the greatest thing. But if it's not slippery, you can stand sure. So this is the thing about assurance. It's a connection to something truer, something that you know and you sense is true deep in your soul, something that you know, even though nobody else knows it, you know that God exists. You know that he is for you. You know that he wants a relationship with you because you've experienced his love. And because you've experienced it, you can stand on that. That's something you can bank on. A word that we use a lot in today, rather than assurance, is like somebody is grounded. Have you ever heard somebody describe another person as grounded? They're grounded. They're sure. They're steady. They're not whisked by the problems this way and that. They're not tempted by all these crises, even though the world might be falling apart around them, but they're grounded. They're standing on something sure. That's what assurance is. That's what it means. Faith is that standing on something that you know to be true. And it's almost that sensation of that. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you're just sure, when you just know. One of my favorite authors of all time, this is going to reveal how much of a nerd I am, is his name's Fyodor Dostoevsky, and he wrote Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov, classic books. Anyway, he was a solid Christian back in the late 1800s. And he has this famous quote that I love. And he was kind of a philosopher as well. He's arguing with people who were atheists. And he said this: "You could prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesus isn't true, and I would choose him every single time." Basically what he's saying is, I don't care about your rational arguments. I don't care that you think that we're acorns that don't come from oak trees. I don't care what you think. I know that this is true it comes from a different place. This knowing does. It's called faith. Faith is our soul's connection to what's really real. Faith is our connection to what's really real. It's important to be connected to reality, right? Does anybody know anybody who's not connected to reality? You know, that dude's crazy. Right? Like, oh, you are not living in reality, okay? You know, you've heard that before. There's a couple of examples of people who are not living in reality. Here's one of them. If you kind of picture reality as that middle line, that's what's real, that's what's really happening. We all know that really naive optimist, right? Who makes plans. We're going to go to Colorado, and in the space of a week, we're going to hike this mountain, and then we're going to go to this coffee shop and this brewery, and we're going to go all these different places. And they don't think of like all the details and the travel and how your energy, like how tired you're going to be. And they just say, we're going to do this, it's going to be awesome. They're kind of disconnected from reality, right? They're not really thinking about what's true. And I see some people like elbowing people. Okay. Sorry. The optimist, not necessarily connected to reality, although fun. Let's be honest, they're fun. Here's another one. Pessimists, kind of disconnected to reality in the opposite way, right? If you go around and you think everything is bad, here's what you're going to miss: the beauty that really does exist. You're going to miss out on the love and joy that is in a relationship with the God of the universe or with another human being. If you're a pessimist, you think that everything is wrong, and so you don't participate in the things that can give you joy. You're disconnected from reality, but just in a different way. Here's another example. Maybe you guys know somebody who has a very overly inflated sense of who they are, right? They're very self-important, and even that phrase, self-important, means that they're disconnected from reality. They're important to themselves, not necessarily what everybody else sees, right? Similarly, when you are depressed or you struggle with anxiety, you're kind of disconnected from reality. You don't see yourself as God sees you. You don't see your life as God sees it. You're disconnected from what's really real. It's kind of a disconnect. If you're here and you're depressed, I want you to know I don't want you to internalize this. I'm just stating this as fact that you might be a little confused. When I'm depressed, I know that I'm not seeing correctly. And very often it takes somebody close to me to reorient me to what's real. It's kind of a disconnect from reality. Here's another one. Maybe you know people who have really, really high expectations and they're constantly disappointed, right? Because, let me just give you, we all have high expectations in certain positions. I happen, and I know I'm getting old because I say this, I happen to have really strong expectations and high expectations of people who are driving. Like, slow down, okay? Like, you don't have to go that fast. And I know that you don't have to get anywhere that important that you're just going to die for it. Holy crap. So anyway, and you have people who like cut you off. I expect people to drive normally and like nice people, right? But it's just, I'm constantly disappointed. Maybe I'm not living in reality, right? I'm expecting something that is probably not going to happen. Here's another example, people with low expectations. These are people who don't believe in you. These are people who are the haters. They don't think you can do it. They don't think anybody can do it. They have really low expectations. Some people say that that's a better way to go. I think that's worse. To be the person who's like, yeah, I don't expect anything of you. You can't do anything. That's way worse. All right, they're disconnected from reality. Here's another one. Does anybody know anybody, or have you ever been in puppy love? Come on. Nobody, just me. All right. Puppy love. Sometimes you're disconnected from reality because you think the other person is perfect. Like they don't even walk. They don't even touch the ground. God just kind of blows a gust of air and they just kind of float along because of their perfection. And here's the thing. You think they're perfect because you don't know their hygiene practices yet. You will get there, I promise. And then you're going to have this crash with reality, but that's a different story. Anyway, or maybe you know somebody who was hurt by somebody that they loved. And even though this person, was a good person who maybe made a mistake and hurt somebody, this other person who was hurt thinks that they are evil. They use words like narcissist, sociopath. There is something deeply wrong with you. Maybe you know somebody who, because of the hurts they have suffered, aren't seeing things quite straight. And that's okay. It's very rational, right? If somebody hurts you, you would think that makes sense. You'd think that they're evil. But the key to know is that when you're hurt, you're not seeing straight sometimes. And same thing when you think that when you're in love, you're not seeing straight. People do dumb things when they're in love. You're not connected to reality. Here's another more spiritual example of reality. Sometimes people in this world, like the Acorns, like the Acorn Village, they think that reality is in this little box of what they have experienced. Philosophically, this position is called materialism. It's the idea that everything that's here is reality and there's nothing outside of what we can see, taste, smell, touch, or hear. If we can see it and feel it with our senses, then it's real. And if I can't see it, then it's not real. Right? These people are, I call them functional materialists because people still believe in love. You can't see love, right? They still believe in hope. They can't see hope. So they're not actually logically consistent, but that's beside the point. Some people feel and believe, like the Acorn Village, that all there is all that we can see, and there's nothing more than that. But like the Acorn prophet who came to their village, he's connected to something deeper. He's connected to something better. He knows that even though it's very rational to think that acorns come from squirrels and that acorns stay acorns until they die. It's very rational to think that. But he knows that there's something more. He knows that there is reality outside of what they know and they've experienced directly with their senses. That's us as Christians. We know that we came from God and where we're going to is Him. We go back. It's great. But the world thinks that we came from nothing and we're going to nothing. One of those positions has hope and one of those positions doesn't. And I'm telegraphing which one I think is the best one. Here's another one. This is a Christian one. Some people put God in a box, and they think that God, all that can be known about God is what they know about God. You've met this person who's like, yeah, you said that, but you're wrong. It's their favorite, it is their favorite thing to tell you that you're wrong, right? Because they're like, God is this. And what happens to this person over time is they begin to believe so much that God is this, that when they experience God in other ways or they see something else in Scripture, they don't change their mind because this is what matters. This is God, even though it's not. God is so much more than anything we could ever say. This is what I'm a theological geek, and I love doctrine, but people who love doctrine have to know this, that doctrine is always, always, always not the only truth. And here's what I mean by that. God is so much more than our words can ever say. So take this concept that God is good. There was in fact, most of the early church fathers subscribed to a system of thought called negative theology. Let's just take a break. Theology with Josh. This is going to be super fun. Who's excited, right? Early church theologians, right? People that developed the Trinity, people that developed the idea of the incarnation, like these guys who put this down, they believed in negative theology. A little bit weird, but follow me. Well, they believed that you could say God is good. Yes, that makes sense. They would say, yes, he is good. But think about that word good. Is that all that God is? In fact, God is so much more than good, and he's so much more than just what we think good is, that our thoughts that are encapsulated in that word. It might be truer to say that he's not good, because he's so much more than. Now, that's a weird way to say it, right? Like, that doesn't make a whole bunch of sense, but you can see how somebody who constantly has the lens of God is so much more than I think he is would walk around in this relationship with God constantly being amazed and in constant wonder of who he is, whereas somebody who thinks they have God figured out, man, that's just a fundamentally less joyful life. So here's my point. God is so much more than what you think he is, and if you think he's just these things, you're not connected to reality. He's so much more than that. That's what faith is. Faith connects us to this reality. Faith is that sense of I'm standing on something that is so firm, so sure, that I don't care what everybody else says. I don't care that you think that there's nothing outside of what I can see, taste, and touch. I know I'm connected to something deeper. I know that there's something more out there, and faith is the thing that connects your soul to God, to that thing, to that reality underneath the reality, what's really real. By the way, Jesus had a name for this reality underneath the reality. He called it the kingdom. Jesus came bringing the kingdom. We knew that he announces that the kingdom of God is here when he comes. We know that the Bible says that the kingdom it was enlarged, it grows, but it's not something that you see. The kingdom of God is not something that you can feel or taste or touch. The kingdom of God is a reality that is true that you can't see with your eyes, but you see through the eye of faith. You're connected to this kingdom through faith. There's a reality that is going on underneath everything that we see. There's more than just what we can see, taste, and touch. There's something more, and faith is what connects us to that thing. I was talking to somebody this week about this concept because I love this idea that faith connects us to what's really real. It connects us to God. And I was talking about that and specifically how the author of Hebrews says it's the assurance of things hoped for. And so, I said faith is that thing that we sense. We know that we can have a relationship with God. We hope in that, and we know because of faith that we will have it. It's that sense of, I'm sure that that's coming. We are going to have a face-to-face relationship with God. And this person had a really interesting reaction. She said, I think that's dangerous. And I said, I think I can see how you would think that. Because what you place your faith in has a direct tie to your soul. It's what your hope is in. What you place your faith in is the thing that you're standing on. And if you place your faith in something that is actually ice on the slope of a driveway and not something sure, you can see how having the rug pulled out from under you or completely falling on this thing would devastate you. You can see how that would be dangerous to put your faith in something that's going to let you down. But the beautiful news of Christianity, the beautiful news that the gospel preaches, that the author of Hebrews is trying to say, is that God never lets you down. We're going to go through this list of people that believed God, even though what was going on in their life made it look like God wasn't going to show up. In the midst of that, in the midst of the storm, they believed. And what we're going to see is that because they believed, They got the thing that they were hoping for. They got that relationship with the God of the universe, putting your faith in something, because it's a direct soul tie, in something other than God. I think puts you on a slippery slope, literally. I think you're standing on something that's not as sure. I think we've all had this experience. Or maybe you believed something about somebody, right? They were good. They were the right person to get into a relationship with. Or maybe you believed in an institution. We started this church out of a lot of people came who had church hurt. They'd been hurt by the church before. And what is so devastating about that is because we as humans we want to believe in something that's good. Like, we want to believe that being a part of a church will help us to change the lives of the people around us. We want to be involved in that. But when the church fails, and when Christians don't act like Christians, sometimes what can happen in our souls, because we've placed faith in the church or Christians instead of God, sometimes we can be desperately and horribly let down. And because it's a direct soul tie, it's so painful. This is my little PSA. Make sure that your faith is in something that's never going to let you down. Make sure your faith is in Jesus. Let's continue. So that's what faith is. It's a direct soul tie to what's really real. It's the connection to reality. Let's pick this up in verse 2. He's going to talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll see what faith does. This is what it is. We'll see what it does. Here's verse 2. For by it, the people of old received their commendation. This is a great translation, but it doesn't make much sense. What he's saying is that the people who came before you, Christians who came before you, people who believed in Jesus, they received their commendation from God. What's a commendation? A commendation is an attaboy. Good job. And here's what basically this is saying. When God, let me put it this way. It's really hard to have a good relationship with something or somebody that you don't believe in, right? Like, if I don't believe that Mark here exists, then we're not going to have a relationship because I think he's a figment of my imagination. I'm just going to ignore him. No, you have to believe that somebody or something exists in order to have a good relationship with it. And when you have that belief, what the Bible is saying, what the author of Hebrews is saying, is that God sees that and he says, yes, you believe in me. Now we can hang out, bro. This is going to be awesome. Plug in your GameCube. I'm just kidding. I don't know if God really plays video games. And he'd probably be the worst to play video games with because he'd probably always win. So anyway, there's another little aside for you. It's a freebie. The people of old received their commendation. They got into a relationship with God. Verse 3, by faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen, catch this, was not made out of things that are visible. What we see comes from something that you can't see. What exists here, your chair, this confetti, my body, this stage, your body, the person next to you, what you see, it does exist, but it came from something that you can't see. There's something else. There's more going on here than what you can just directly sense and experience in this world. And faith is the connection to that thing. It's the connection to the reality, the kingdom that God is bringing through. That was verse 3. What is made out of things that are invisible. Here's verse 4. Now we're going to kind of transition and see what faith does. What faith does. He's going to start the list of the people in the Faith Hall of Fame. Here it goes. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteousness. He has a good relationship with God. God commending him by accepting his gifts. And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. You might know the story of Cain and Abel. Cain has this belief about God. God is good, God is worth it. And so what he offers to God as a sacrifice is his very best stuff. And I want you to see this, because what he does, his actions, his behavior, reflects what he believes. God is worth it. God is good. God is so good. I want to give him the best. Let me put this a different way. Faith produces faithfulness. When you believe something, your life lines up with the things that you believe. It reflects the things that you believe. Abel believed that God was worth it, so his life reflected that belief, and he offered a good sacrifice. Cain has a different belief. Cain thinks God is like, meh, he's okay. So what Cain offered, his life reflected that belief. What Cain offered was the second best, not the best. And so the story of Cain and Abel is actually a story of faith producing faithfulness. Because what happens with Abel is that because of what he believes, he does the right thing. Cain believes something else, and his life reflects that. What you have to see is that faith produces faithfulness. Jesus put this a different way. He said, you'll know them by their fruit. You'll know people, you'll know what they believe, you'll know where their heart is by the way that they live their life. Because what you do reflects what you believe. What you are faithful to reflects your faith. Does that make sense? Faith produces faithfulness. Here's another example. That was Abel. Here's another example. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death. He was not found because God had taken him. I love that. Now, before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Again, if you believe in God, that will produce in you a life that seeks him. You have to believe that he exists in order to have a good relationship with him. And the story of Enoch goes like this, that Enoch was a very righteous man. He loved God. He believed that God was good. He loved spending time with God so much that he made it his entire life. And so what God did, he said, Enoch, you're not even going to die. Just come up here and be with me. And then there he goes. And that's the noise it made too. And then he's in heaven. Crazy. That's in Genesis, by the way. It's not. Anyway, but that's the story of Enoch. He had faith in God, and because of that faith, it produced faithfulness in his soul. He sought God, and God just took him up. Faith produces faithfulness. But here's another important thing, though. I want you to know what faith doesn't produce, okay? Faith produces faithfulness, but there's something that it doesn't produce. Let's check this out. This is verse 7. By faith, I'm going to read a couple verses and then we'll go back, just FYI. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events yet unseen, in reverent fear, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as his inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, those are his son and grandson, heirs with him to the same promise. For he was looking forward to a city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars in heaven and as many as the innumerable grains of sand on the seashore. 3 characters, okay? And he holds these people up. These people had faith. That faith produced faithfulness. But what he's leaving out, in which if you were Jewish and receiving this letter that you would know, these people aren't that great. Noah was a drunk, okay? Abraham, there's this great story of Abraham. He goes to the promised land because God tells him go to the promised land, but he doesn't stay there. Abraham goes down to Egypt, and when he gets to Egypt, the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, looks at Abraham's wife, and he says, ooh, that lady's attractive. I want her to be a part of my harem. And Abraham says, good news, it's my sister. You can have her. Not a great dude, okay? Abraham done messed up, okay? So, and here's the thing, Sarah's another example of somebody who believed God, and because she believed God, her life, and this was kind of cool about Sarah, her body actually produced faithfulness. Her body lived in that other reality where this, we would think that she's too old, but God allowed her to become pregnant by faith. So she believed him. But the crazy thing about Sarah is that she didn't actually believe him that much. She said, you know what we're going to do? Yeah, I believe God's going to give us a son, but here's how we're going to do this. Abraham, you're going to sleep with my maidservant, and she's going to have a son, then we'll adopt him. And so God is still faithful. You know that person who can wiggle and justify anything that they can do? Oh, wait, that's us? Yeah, okay. Here's Sarah saying, I'm going to be faithful to God, but it's just going to look a little bit different. It's okay. Here's the thing. She's not that great. Here's what faith does. Faith produces faithfulness, but faithfulness does not mean perfection. I want you to know this, that God knows that you're not perfect. He knows that you've made mistakes. and he knows that you're going to make more mistakes. He expects you to be faithful to him, to follow him wherever he's going. He expects you to pursue him with your life, but he knows that you're not going to do it perfectly. I think sometimes it's only us that place this expectation of perfection upon us. We know that God doesn't have this expectation because he made a plan so that we could figure out what to do when you mess up. God's plan was that he himself would be made flesh. He would put on human flesh, and then he would come and die on the cross, taking all of our sins, giving us his perfection. God's plan for your lack of perfection is to make you perfect. And I want you to see this because this is crucial. He makes you perfect, not your faith. Not how, like some people will say, if you struggle with addiction, you just got to have more faith. You just got to believe this and you'll overcome it. But here's the truth. God loves you even when you're making a mistake. And the truth of Christianity is that he's the one who makes you perfect. And I believe when you believe that awakens your soul to something better. That connects you to a deeper reality. And when you're connected to that reality, you are enabled to follow him. Why? Because faith produces faithfulness. And if you believe that he loves you and he died for you, I believe that will produce something in your soul that we call sacrifice. Something that we call surrender and dependence. That will produce a heart posture that says, God, whatever you want, I am for you. I am following you. I'm going to go with you because I know how much you love me. I think when you believe that God wants faithfulness, it actually enables you to obey him more. I want to finish with this story. Ever since I was 19, I wanted to be a pastor. The band can come up while I'm doing this. I wanted to be a pastor. God changed my heart. And I had, from that moment on, every church I was a part of, I tried to be a part of their ministry. So I was over a college ministry. I oversaw nursing home ministry. I did youth ministry. I did everything that I possibly could to be involved in ministry. And so I'll never forget the day that I actually got offered my first full-time gig as a pastor. It was one of the happiest days of my life. My wife was actually in Ireland with my mom and sister, because my sister lived there at the time. And I was trying to call her, and I couldn't call her because it was different time zone. But I didn't think about that. I just literally forgot. I was so happy. So maybe you can imagine how 2 years later, when I got a phone call saying that it kind of all fell apart, this church that I believed in, this church that I was a part of, this church that I thought was going to change the world, I got this phone call that let me know that it just had all fell apart. Maybe you can see how that produced such a deep depression in me. I'm already prone to depression, but I remember for the next few weeks, I just laid on my bed, and I remember my daughters coming in and saying, "Can we play, Papa?" And I'm in a weird space where I can't even answer them. And I remember having all of this all these thoughts that were it was stupid of you to ever hope that you could be a part of something that's going to change a community. It was stupid of you to ever put your hope in this. You couldn't handle this situation. You're never going to be a pastor. It was stupid of you to even hope that. And on top of that, I'm just so debilitated that I'm not engaging with my family. I have this shame and guilt for that. But I remember one day my wife walked up the stairs and she sat on the bed next to me and she held my hand and she looked square into my eyes and she said, "I want you to know this, that if God has brought you here, he still has plans for you." And I gotta tell you, it's the weirdest little shift. It's the weirdest thing to happen, to have 3 or 4 little words, a short phrase, make such an impact on my soul. But when she said those words, faith awakened in me, and I began to actually believe that maybe what I was experiencing wasn't true, that there was something truer, that maybe God did have a purpose for my life. And what you gotta see is that my problems had painted this picture. And this picture was so realistic, it was so lifelike that I thought that it was real. But when she said those words, faith awakened in me and I connected to something deeper, and I knew that the life that I was experiencing, the picture that my problems had painted wasn't true at all. I knew that there was something better. That's the power of faith. I want to give you an opportunity to stand on something firm, to make your faith grow a little bit. And I believe that this best happens during worship. What worship does when you're singing, it unites your heart, your emotions, with your head, the facts of what you believe. And there's something about standing in truth and singing it that awakens faith in your soul. And so I'm going to ask you to go ahead and stand up. And I pray that as we sing these next few songs, that the Spirit ministers to your soul and makes your faith grow.